Would it be okay if we speak English, since there are English-speaking people in the audience? Yeah? No? Or Spanish? No. Well, actually, my reflection is more on the first film we saw, because the second film, I have always lived with it, and I saw many, yeah, I can give some comments about housing situation in Latin America, but I could see many similarities between Brooklyn and urban areas in Latin America in terms of that the role of communities and community organization is very strong. There I can see similarities now. I can also see differences, because what we do not have in Latin America are very strong developers, which seem to have been a challenge in Brooklyn now. But we have very weak local governments in Latin America, and a lack of continuity.
One of the people here in the film said something of the importance of the civil society, and how important that is, that is civil society involves in this development. And you can compare with our own country, Sweden. And, we sometimes forget that we had a development similar to this that we see in this film. But it was just a long time ago. And in the 19th century, you could have added Sweden here to the list of a certain amount of people living in slums, actually. And officially, people lived in slums until, let's say, 1950s, 60s. If you say that people didn't have running water and maybe electricity was earlier and so on, but this race, we don't live in cities that have slums in the aspect that we see in this film today, but we did, and how we could raise that was very much thanks to civil society. I mean, we need both the power of the people, but we have also a big need of organizations, of laws and infrastructure, all these kind of things. That is very interesting to compare with our own history, because we can always reflect on many things.
Yes, my reflection with these two movies is, since my field of knowledge is particularly gentrification in the Western world, I saw these two movies as quite different from each other. But what I could say, I will mostly talk about the first movie, since that's my field of knowledge. There are two kinds of gentrifications, actually, and this kind that we saw here in this movie is sort of the government corporation planned gentrification, basically, where they where there's a strategy to replace certain people from top down, basically. And there's another type of gentrification which I feel is maybe not always negative, maybe more natural, and that is the sort of gentrification which is, basically a neighborhood becomes more popular, and therefore there's a natural flow of people there, and it's not natural flow of dynamic, and which is, come from the people itself, theirself, and not planned from above, basically. The other movie is it's not my field of knowledge, actually, but what I can say is, there's a big problem which is quite different from the first movie. It's a more, basic human rights problem, I think.
I think that both of the films show societies that have a much wider range of different classes than we have in Sweden, but still in Sweden we also have not a homogeneous society that we also have people that are not really part of our society, and we are people that are not really part in building up the society together with us. But the idea of developing Brooklyn that we saw in the first film, they really did not want to talk about the race aspect in the planning, but they talked about bringing more diversity into this area. And you think that they succeeded with this aim through the developing of Brooklyn?
Well, I don't think you can plan this kind of things that way, which is shown on the movie. You know, this is not gentrification in the way that dynamic changes because people want to move to a certain place and you know, it becomes more popular. This is a sort of gentrification where government and corporations, you know, paradoxically plan the economy, basically. It's a sort of a planned economy almost. You know, they want to really get these people out of there because they have their interests in reshaping the neighborhood. It's not natural gentrification, it's planned gentrification. And I don't think it can be successful, actually, no.
In the second film, we saw a great deal of cooperation, and that you involved the communities, many different actors. And I would like to ask you, Johnny, do you have any, is this program ended now, or will you continue to work with these countries, or does it continues to work by itself now as there have been improved knowledge in these countries?
Well, the program have ended in the sense that the funding from the Swedish government, or SIDA, has ended. But our partners continue to work. And I spoke to one partner 2 days ago, Gustavo Riofrio, we saw on the screen here. He's now working as an advisor to the mayor of Lima. Lima has a population of 9 million, and trying to have an impact as much as possible to have a pro-poor planning now of Lima city now. We also organized the seminar last year with the Bolivian government, and Bolivia is one of the most unequal countries in the world now, to try to make progress on the housing policy in the country. So efforts are continued, but not on a coordinated with all the partners, but country by country now. There's one issue that is very different from Brooklyn and cities in Latin America that I would like to raise, and that is the density, both in terms of buildings and population density. We could almost see that in the film. But Lima today has a lower population density than 100 years ago. And so has many countries cities in developing countries. And that is a major challenge for planners in the future.
Okay, I think we are now starting to reach really a late hour, and I would like to thank the panel for participating, and also thank all the ones who stayed and watched both of the movies. And do you want to say anything else? Do you have some questions from the...
I was thinking the things, really fantastic, but I was thinking a different, or maybe a similarity, or actually a word between the two films is scale. So the development in Brooklyn is, actually I think it's less about race than about scale. Race is a byproduct and it's a negative, the consequence, but it's a scale of development. It's the same as it happens in China, so basically it's a recalibration of the values of the land in Brooklyn, but it's a very large scale development. It's like a few ideas, if you will. 5 companies or 6 companies make a big change in the city of Brooklyn, but that they build lots of units and buy decisions. Whereas the slum is large-scale development, has to be horizontal, But it's large scale. I mean, they're opposite ends of the spectrum, if you will. But there's a question about, or just an idea about scale. I'm not saying good or bad. There's a quality of similarity just in terms of the scale. I don't know if there's any questions or feedback on that.
We have, I don't know if there was any, there is another question, I think, from the...
Right. Hi, my name is Kami. I was just reacting on your what you said just now. I'm not so sure about the absence of race in the example that we saw in the first movie, because I really see it as they really don't want these people to be in this area when it's finished, because it would have been very easy for these developing corporations to include them into their huge project at really marginal costs. So there's obviously something that an aspect of them really not wanting these elements to be there. So I'm not so sure about race suddenly being a non-issue in American urban planning. I think the movie did a good job at describing the intrinsic race problem in American planning over the history of, well, let's say, the 20th century. And I'm not so sure that has been any dealing with it within the planning communities or within policy making. A few weeks ago, I was attending a very short but intense lecture by an American professor from Rochester Institute of Technology. She's called Anne something. No, I don't remember the last name right now. And she was describing also a district in Rochester, in central Rochester, that had been also kind of a race issue. A lot of predominantly black people living in a very dense urban area, well, very historical center, kind of, but also this area had been sort of the issue of white flight and a rapid redlining, such as described in this movie. And it was quite interesting because in that area there had been a successful organization from the grassroots community. So obviously there are different approaches to this issue, and that it can actually be successful, which I don't believe it was in Brooklyn. So that's an interesting example.
There was one aspect more I would like to add, if I have time. I will very short. Eric said scale, mentioned the scale, but there's also a question of speed. I mean, all these changes in Brooklyn, they can come very sudden, very fast, and from one day to another, it changed. I was thinking of all these small funny shops that were shown in this film, and I was thinking of my own town, Lund. Where do we have these shops? They have all gone since a long time ago, but I didn't disappear suddenly by any project like this. It has taken a long time, so we have got used to it. But in a way, we have the same problem of gentrification in Swedish cities than you see in Brooklyn. But the one difference is that when it takes longer time, we get used to it and not so shocked. It's like a disaster. German or European towns were bombed during the Second World War, and in Sweden we tore down the city centers in the same extent that these cities were destroyed. But it took 20, 30 years, so we don't mention this as a disaster in our country.
Yeah, also on the comment of scale, because I think we see that also in Latin America, not so much from developers, but from local government. When Lima grew very fast, the city government decided to make 300,000 plots, all of the size 5 by 21 meter. And this is also an issue of scale. We do not see that today in Latin America, but it's very common that you do 10,000 plots, 15,000 plots, 20,000 plots, exactly the same size. And I have never seen that this has developed a good environment, this kind of planning in scale. We also have in Latin America, of course, racial issues. In countries like Guatemala, the indigenous people don't have it so easy, and also in Bolivia, even though it has improved now, there is very strong segregation.
Yeah, or do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question from, I just have one comment because of this racial issue, which I think is quite sad looking, because we both lived in Brooklyn for a period. Like in New York City, you have Little Italy and Chinatown, and what's sad to me is that it seems like the greed has just overwhelmed people, that they didn't have foresight to make like a little Brooklyn, because to kind of keep some of that culture intact, because having lived there, I appreciate that it was there. You know, and just to see how it was just, like you said, the timing, it just doesn't seem fair. It was just like this culture was just stripped away. It is a culture, and that's what's sad, because it should have been acknowledged or honored, and you know, it's people go to Chinatown, they go to New York City, they go to Chinatown, they go to Little Italy, and I think this culture is hip hop, and there's history, and that all is very sad to me, that just there's no foresight.
Yeah, I would actually agree with you on that part, because this type of gentrification which we saw in the first movie is very strange for me, because these kind of neighborhoods like Brooklyn or like Soho or like Greenwich Village and everything became popular because of a certain type of community, and that's what attracted people there. And that's sort of the kind of natural gentrification where people sort of choose to go to a place because they like the environment, and therefore, you know, the prices goes up and all that. But this is a kind of gentrification which the planners and the developers are kind of stuck in a habit, a modernist habit, I would say, where they put all these big, malls and everything, and put a big automobile town, which maybe would be accurate, I don't know, 40 years ago, but it's not accurate now. It's a bad habit, actually. And to be serious, I don't think this will be very successful, not even economically, because we don't see this type of city attractive anymore. So it's a total failure, I would say.
Okay, I think also from the film in Brooklyn, there was an issue on how the politics also were like benefiting from this growth, economical benefit, because they were on two seats, that they were in the business and in the like politics, and then you are sweeping away the democracy in some terms. But I think it was really good, Thomas, that you brought up the historical aspects of it, because it really takes time to build a city. And myself, as a city planner, we sometimes want things to happen fast, because we have a pressure to show show something's happening. But we should not neglect the value of the historical natural growth of certain things, and probably this is like this is a problem for us, because sometimes we doesn't understand what we missed until it's gone. So, do we have any more comments, or should we?
What I think from my comment, looked like I was saying is supportive of that. I just think that the main reason why Brooklyn changed is about money and greed. It's about power and a few people of land, and it's basically undervalued, so they reap 100 times the value of that land and put on a one idea kind of a project, which is what happened in Brooklyn. And I think it's a global phenomenon. I think it happens, it happens in Sweden, it happens everywhere, and I don't know what it does because of how money is organized with development now, in terms of just, you know, it's maybe even in stock market equities. It makes it a different kind of scale, I think, globally, the way that projects are done. So they change neighborhoods, and one fell swoop, they changed neighborhood and the scale of the city. You know, those buildings in Brooklyn are almost the size of several city blocks, so they just have to be tall. So it's I think it's a global question about how we keep character and complexity of, you know, different income types and different characters of people. I think we all struggle with globally that. That's my question, I guess.
Excuse me, do you think their interest in Brooklyn comes from Manhattan use due diligence now?
Yeah. Yeah, because there's more land. I mean, Brooklyn's, I was just in Brooklyn two weekends ago, and a friend has a big place. He calls Brooklyn's the new Manhattan. That's what they, we lived in 5 places. I didn't realize this film was about where we live. And the whole energy has changed from when we lived there, because it was rough when I lived there. I've always lived in rough places on the edges. And now it's all kind of like with the cappuccino shops and things, which is nice, but there's more land there. You know, it's basically, it's valuation, so it's been undervalued. Like I did a project in Bed-Stuy in 1970, whatever, 25 years ago, and no white person would ever write their life in Bed-Stuy, but I'm writing around, so it was undervalued, so I'm sure it would, you know, a plot cost $10,000 and it was worth $1 million, so it's about recalibration, and I think that's where it seems like in this film, city officials and then some developers kind of see some value, but then they don't spread that value to other people. Only a few people take the benefit of it. You know, that's a long-winded answer to your question.
Okay. Are we finished now with the discussion, or you have some more questions or some more comments? Yeah?
Just trying to also to clarify what I said before. I'm seeing it more as a process of raising race from this area. It's sort of, it's being fitted with a vision of a city which has no room for racial variations, for diversity in the reasons, and for anything that sort of strays from sort of a generic culture. I'm thinking more of it in that way, sort of an idealization of American culture or urban life in some way that really has no room whatsoever for these pre-existing elements. Maybe that's not true to the assumption.
Okay. Then yet again, I would like to thank all you who came here in the panel.